There are many reasons why CEOs should care deeply about the workplace culture at their company. Yes, engaged employees are more productive, but more importantly, creating an inclusive and supportive work environment is the right thing to do. While many companies have good intentions with their attempts at building culture, some fall short. In this video, watch Jaguar Freight CEO Simon Kaye and Chain.io CEO Brian Glick share their perspectives on why workplace culture is vital to any logistics company's success and how to build and maintain an environment where employees feel valued and want to be a part of.
Today, we're going to spend some time talking about workplace culture and specifically workplace culture for companies in logistics space. Why do you think that workplace culture is important and worth both of us taking some time to talk about today?
Sure. So this has been an evolution of thought, but I think it is the most important thing in business, in any business. I am now a big believer in the Peter Drucker quote, culture eats strategy for breakfast. If it's breakfast or lunch, but it's certainly a meal. And I think culture is the single most important thing in any organization today
Why?
because it differentiates and defines. It is whatever you have is in a business. There's always going to be someone who's either cheaper than you, or is going to copy you, or is going to change the way things are done. But your real differentiator is your people, and your people are only as good as the culture in the organization. So it is, I just think, monumentally important to the business. You can tell a good or a bad culture very quickly when interacting with employees at an organization. And I think it sort of like comes through, and it can be something that uplifts people, or it can be something that like drags them down and sort of, makes them think, when the alarm goes off in the morning, oh my goodness, not another day. Or, oh my goodness, terrific. Thank goodness I get to work at Jaguar Freight again today. And maybe I'm exaggerating there, and you'll have to speak to my staff about how they feel when the alarm goes off in the morning.
I know your staff, and they do seem pretty happy. So I'll give you that one. So I had a neighbor of mine actually the other day. This just popped into my head. He was telling me he's retired now, but when he was younger, that he worked for a temp agency. And he
Okay.
said after a couple of summers of doing temp work where he was at a different company almost every day, he could tell within 5 minutes of walking in the front door, what the culture, whether it was going to be a good place to work or a bad place to work, right? And that it was, he said it was no one thing, but it was a thousand things. As the body language of the receptionist, and whether the office was clean, and whether, and these are very physical things at the time, which is different in the world right now. But kind of, what do you see as some of the things that you know would like him to see if he comes into Jaguar?
Sure. So I think, as you know, firstly, we're a complete distributed workforce now, so no one's physically walking into our offices anymore. So it's really in the interactions, right?
Hmm.
And it's, I always say that with every interaction, you're either polishing or tarnishing the Jaguar brand. And so, with the first interaction and every interaction after that, we want someone to feel like they're being listened to, they're being heard, they're getting to where they need to be, answers wise or connections wise as quickly as possible. And it's all done, willingly and with an intent to satisfy. And I think that's what that's what I would want anyone that's interacting with anyone in my organization to feel. It's like, wow, these people care about what I'm calling in about, or what I'm communicating with them about, and they got me what I needed, and maybe they got me more than what I needed, and more than what I expected. And I think that's what I would want anybody to feel when they interacted with us.
So at Chain, really from day one of our company, I had this belief that in the age of the internet and the age of social media, your internal culture and your external culture have to be the same, and that was not always the case, right? You could be the smile factory externally and be an awful corporate culture, 30, 40 years ago. What are some of the things that you do or that you encourage internally that then create the environment for that external positive culture with the customers?
Yeah, I think, what we do internally is listen to people, allow them to have a voice, ensure that they're being heard, that they contribute, that they feel part of the organization. I think, you know, it's difficult to get people inspired if they don't feel that they're having an impact, or they feel part of what's going on, or they're unsure of what the direction of the company is. And when they know what's going on, when they know they're being heard, when their input is actions, that inspires them and gets them invested. And I think that's sort of like the difference that I find at Jaguar when I look at other companies as well. And some of them, unfortunately, could be clients. You sort of like, people don't feel invested at other companies. At Jaguar, people really feel invested. They feel like they're part of what's going on, they're influencing what's going on, and that sort of like comes through, and you can't fake that. That's sort of like comes through from the soul. They really are invested in what we're doing, what the philosophy of the company is, and and they're invested in the success, because the company's success is their success.
So I think in the previous century, and so we're both old enough to have worked in the previous century,
Yes.
what you just said would be met with, let's say, a quizzical look from people, right? Those words would not have made any sense. Kind of what was your evolution to get from the generation that raised us professionally to now working in an environment where what you just said is sort of taken as not a strange thing to say.
Yeah, sure. I think you're right. I think, probably, if I had said this 20 years ago, people are like scrubbing, longer even as well, but yeah, scratching their head. What are you talking about? What do what do you mean people are invested in the organization? I mean, it's a job, right? That's what they do. That's what we're paying them to do. That's sort of like such an old world view. Look, for me, it's been an evolution. I think you used the right word, because I haven't always thought this way. And I came up with sort of like an old school different training as far as management is concerned. For me, I have to give credit to an organization that I'm now a member of for the last 10 years, which is Vistage. I don't know if you're familiar with Vistage or not. It's a CEO peer-to-peer learning group. I spend an entire day every month with a group of 15 other CEOs talking about business issues and processing issues, listening to speakers, and so many of the speakers they have talk about culture. And it was really an evolution through Vistage, listening to these speakers and understanding the value of the culture that transitioned me to where I am today. And I think people at Jaguar would and I have employees who've been with me 17 years plus. They've seen that change. And what I was saying today, I probably would not have been saying 15 years ago. So yeah, I think my thinking has evolved, and I think for the better, and I think the organization is considerably stronger because of it.
In that evolution, I'm sure there's been some mistakes along the way, or things that you've had to
You
kind of
think
change
so,
course.
Brian?
I'm going to guess. I'm going to make a guess that somewhere along there something didn't go perfectly. Do you have any kind of examples or thoughts on things or learnings that maybe you can help somebody else avoid?
Yeah, so I often say, we celebrated 30 years in business a couple of months ago. So I often say it hasn't been a straight line, and I've made plenty of mistakes along the way. But that's where you learn, where you make the mistakes. With regards to culture and examples of where things had either unintended consequences or didn't work out the way that we expected, I don't think there's anything that we've changed, but what I will say, there are things that we've thought of doing that we didn't do. So one example is we thought of providing and offering unlimited PTO. We thought that would be a great benefit to people, not to have to worry about PTO, not to have just have unlimited. Take what you want. You've got to get your job done, but take what you want. But when we investigated it, spoke about it, talked to companies and employees from other companies who had unlimited PTO, they actually didn't like the concept because they felt that it really wasn't unlimited, and they actually didn't take the time because they thought that that there was this imaginary George Orwellian eye looking over them to see what they were taking, what they weren't taking, what their colleagues were taking. They didn't want to be compared to anyone else. So there were definitely there are, I think, unintended consequences of something like unlimited PTO. We didn't implement it, but it was something that we were seriously considering. I think on the flip side of that, something that we are seriously considering, haven't implemented yet, and are still in the exploratory stage, very much in the exploratory stage, is a 4-day work week, and seeing how that could potentially work and enhance culture and enhance productivity as well, although that potentially sounds counterintuitive to some people. So I think specifically for culture, I can't think of anything that we've implemented that we've had to change, but certainly there are things that we've looked at, such as unlimited PTO, that we haven't implemented because of potential unintended consequences.
So both of those things you just talked about are things that, when I was in executive leadership roles in forwarders and brokers, we're like, we can call them butts and seats issues, right? Like, and this was always a great point of contention between me running kind of IT and being involved in sales and things that did not involve the functioning of the freight, with the leadership from the operations side who said, "Hey, I need people. Like, we can't just all leave at 1 o'clock on Friday. There's cargo sitting at the port at 2 o'clock on Friday, right?" So, and now, you've gone to fully remote, when certainly the culture I grew up in was, I want to see the person typing the shipment, right? I want to see how fast they're typing, and I want to, and that was always this thing between back office and operations, was the operational managers had to, be very on top of everything. How have you, as you've gone remote, either resisted the I'm assuming you don't use keystroke loggers because that would seem against everything you just said, but like,
I,
how have you resisted that temptation or gotten used to not being able to see everyone sitting there typing the entry or the shipment all day?
Sure. Yeah. So I think it's a bit of a misnomer, right? Because when you were in the office, no one's literally standing over your shoulder watching what you're doing for 8 hours a day. And the reality is that if someone is goofing off at home, they were almost certainly goofing off in the office as well. And I think it's really a matter of trust and understanding, managing expectations with people. So for me, we've actually found, and it's a double-edged sword, we've actually found productivity has improved in a remote environment. And I think if you trust people, you provide them with the tools, you give clear expectations on what's expected and required of them. And then I go back to what I said previously, they're invested in the success of the business, because the business's success directly reflects on them, and they benefit from it as well. So, I don't want to link this too much to like finances and money, but we have a profit sharing scheme at Jaguar as well. So, as successful as the company is, the employees benefit from that, but they're not doing it because of the money. That's a nice perk, but they're in them being invested in the business ensures that what needs to get done does get done. And you know what? If they've got a dentist appointment at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, or they go and walk the dog, or they got to let the plumber in or whatever, and they take an hour or 2 or 3 off in the middle of the day, they come back and finish off their work and make sure everything gets done in a timely manner. So I haven't experienced that problem. I know a lot of people talk about it. I haven't experienced it, and I think it comes back to the culture.
You you touched on something there that I think is really important, which is that the person who's gonna screw around at home is probably also screwing around in the office, right? And I've had a number of conversations either with our people operations team, who I'm not allowed to call HR anymore for some reason, or with our management around some of these more looser policies. Like, we do have unlimited PTO. We manage it as a minimum, so it's you must take, so to kind of get away from that feeling like all unlimited means zero. It's okay, you have to take X number of weeks, and then if you have something beyond that, you shouldn't feel like you can't. That's sort of our approach to it. But one of the things that I always kind of get at is that same thing that people have said, well, if we don't have a policy and the person's abusing it, I can't fire them for that, right? Or, if we don't have a policy for X and the person's not doing X, I can't fire them for that. And I've always said, well, if they're not doing X or Y, or they're doing the thing you want to have a policy for so you can fire them, they're probably also doing a bad job, right? Like, they're probably also bad at their job, and you can fire them for the results. And ultimately, it becomes less about you can fire them for the results, as the only conversation you should ever really be having is, what are the results, right? If the person takes 50 weeks off a year, and in those 2 weeks they do better work than somebody else would do in 52, what do you have to complain about, right? Like, that person has optimized their job very well. Obviously extreme, but I do think that idea that you hire good people and then you can have a good culture, and recruiting is a really important part of that. So
Yeah, I think outcomes are critical, right? What the expectations are, and are people delivering against those expectations, and ensuring that people are clear on what's expected from them, and what the job requires. But to your point about hiring good people, I mean, absolutely yes, you have to hire good people. But it's funny because we were having, so twice a week in our remote environment, we all get together on a Zoom call. On a Friday, we have what's called a rose and thorn session, where everyone shares a positive and a negative for the week, and it could be business, it could be personal, but it's a really nice way of, so, like, hearing what's going on in people's lives. And to your point, there was a conversation about football or soccer, and Paris Saint-Germain, and how they've got all these great players, but they haven't won the Champions League, or they haven't succeeded in the way that these great players should. And it's like, you can have good people, but if they're not a team, right? If they're not playing together, if they're not collaborating, if they haven't got each other's back, if they're not supporting one another, they could be the best players in the world. You're not going to get the outcome that you're looking for. And so, yes, hire good people, but people who are a cultural fit, who will work together, who will support one another. That's what I think is most important.
getting started with this, which is always a weird thing for me to even say, because unless you're literally starting a company from scratch, you're not really getting started. This is always part of a continuity of something. There's a culture in place where you are, but I think it would be interesting maybe if we talk to two different audiences here, and maybe you take the first one, which is leadership. And if somebody, like what are the things that if somebody feels like they don't have this collaborative culture, like what are the baby steps to kind of get it moving?
It's almost like anything. It's like, first you got to recognize you got a problem, right? Recognize you got a problem, and also recognize how important culture is. That's to me is step one. If you're sort of like the old, what should be funny bumper sticker, the beatings will continue until morale improves, right? It's like, recognize that that is not the way. That may have been the way in the 80s and the 90s, who knows? But you have to listen to your employees. You have to understand what's important to them, what's valuable to them. And quite frankly, you have to root out the toxic people in your organization, even if they're high performers, which can be very hard for a lot of people. because people like that can be a cancer in an organization. And so I think it's the recognition that culture is monumentally important. And I can't stress that enough, at least from my perspective and how I see things. Talk to people, understand what's important to them, action those things, and remove people who don't buy into it, who are toxic in an organization.
The, the day you remove someone who is a high performer and bad for the company is the day that everyone starts believing that you're serious about this stuff.
Yes.
We had not at Chain, but at a previous company, we used to have in IT, there were these people, we would call them arsonist firefighters,
Mm.
right? They would create very, very complicated systems that would always break, and then they would really enjoy the pat on the back when they fixed the thing that was down. But when you're running warehouses and when you're moving freight, it was still down, right? The freight still didn't move that day.
Right.
And, the moment that we started not rewarding those people and we started, getting those people out of the organization is when everyone else at that company sort of realized, oh, okay, that's no longer the behavior that's rewarded here, even if that person's very smart or very able to solve these complicated problems. Like in our culture, what we were trying to establish was we want to not have problems in the first place, not reward people for fixing the problems that exist.
Right.
But yeah, it was a very transformative moment. I remember in I'm not going to call out the organization because they're actually a customer of mine right now, but there's a moment where people start going, oh my god, the boss really means this. And it's often when you start putting the right people in place. So
Yeah, and you suddenly get the credibility
mhm.
that you didn't have before, and then suddenly people start believing, okay, they are serious, they are going to do what's right, they are listening, because it's very easy to turn a blind eye, particularly for a high performer, but it's not the right thing to do.
So let's talk to a different audience for a second, which is the person who maybe doesn't have organizational power, right? Who is a line level employee somewhere. And, do you have any thoughts on how they can influence culture?
I think at whatever level you're at, you lead by example. You lead by example. You talk up, to management. You put yourself forward. I think that, like my father always says, you can't go wrong doing the right thing. And I think I would say that to anybody at any level in any organization is like, do the right thing, be be the person that you are and you want others to be like as well. And things will follow, things will change, people will recognize it, and if
Yeah,
they don't, you're in the wrong organization.
that's very fair. And I think to that point, and the way that kind of I've always said is just live in the world you want to live in, not the world you're in, right? In your behaviors, right? And I think maybe a tip that I have for if you feel like you're in a culture that's needs to be adjusted is it's not always about talking about the culture, right? That sometimes when you're when you're not in the senior leadership position, it can be almost counterproductive because to just keep calling out and talking ad nauseum about I don't like the culture, I don't like the culture, I don't like the culture. Live the culture, behave in a way that is the way you want the behaviors to have. And that's so much more influential than just talking about culture as this theoretical thing separate from what you're actually doing with your day, right? If you're in the back gossiping and then you complain about how gossipy the culture is,
Right.
you're not going to get a lot done.
Right,
So,
right, okay, right. Yeah, I agree, and I, have an employee who's been with me for 17 years now, and sort of like on a regular basis over a number of years, whenever we talk to her, she always says, in my previous jobs, people didn't have my back, or wouldn't support me, and I don't have that experience at all here. Everyone is, got their hand out, looking to help me, looking to support me. I'm there doing it for them, and I think that to me, that's like what it should be about, and you shouldn't lock yourself in and throw your arms up and say, oh, it's not going to get any better, and I'm stuck here, and this is as good, as good as it gets. Now, I think you can change, and and change people around you. You can influence people without question. We see that all the time. In the political world, and in various sporting scenarios, we see it all the time. But like, if it's that bad, find somewhere else. There are better places to work, and those are the good places that you want to be at.
So as we wrap up here, maybe let's try to share a couple of stories. Kind of what's something in your culture at Jaguar that you're proud of?
Wow, I'm proud of so much, but I'm proud of the fact that people take it personally. Like, people are really, and I've used the word maybe too often on this call or on this chat, but like, they're invested. They really take it personally when it goes wrong, or it doesn't go the way they wanted or expected, even if it's out of their control. They really feel it, and they're gonna do whatever they can to put it right for the customer. So I think, just like the fact that people talk about it, and I know that people feel differently about this expression, but most people in my organization talk about a family atmosphere. And I know business isn't family, and some people don't like talking about businesses as families, but at Jaguar, people talk about part of the Jaguar family, and that makes me proud.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, I think that's an awesome place to wrap up. So why don't we just call it right there? And again, thanks so much for chatting today.
Thank you very much. It's always a pleasure, Brian.